The Predator by Chidochase Gumuyu. Setlalekgosi Junior Secondary School, Francistown District. Narrated by Bogadi Babusi, Maung Senior Secondary School, Maung.
Tanaya is HIV positive. As a boarding student in a junior secondary school in Francistown, she faces rejection and discrimination. In response, Tanaya has become rebellious and decided not to take her medication. One night, lying curled up in a fetal position on her bed, tears streamed down her face. My life. She croaks into the blackness of the night. Will it get any better? For how long will I suffer? I can't even take my medication around here, where everyone is watching and ready to scorn me. It started when Tanaya's father, Mr. Bangala, gave up the ghost. His friend Sparrow read the ghastly details of Mr. Bangala's death in a newspaper. It sure was good news to him. Sparrow set off hunting for the Bangala family. It didn't take long for him to locate them. He studied Tanaya, his mouth watering like a predator's. Tanaya was only 14, with pink juicy lips and small brown eyes that peered out innocently from under curly brows. She had long, thick black hair and a petite nose, well proportioned to the rest of her facial features. The predator licked his lips. For how long had he always wanted a slice of this girl? Her father had always been in his way, a barrier between him and the luscious piece of meat. Mr. Bangala was his friend, but he had a really beautiful and ripe little girl. Sparrow had a thing for little girls. Now that the barrier was dead, he had to make his move, one way or another. And there was Mrs. Bangala, the widowed wife with a hot Spanish figure and a killer smile. Surely the daughter picked her amazing looks from her amazing mother. When he was done with the small chicken, Sparrow fantasized. He sure would fry the turkey. Tanaya walked home slowly in the heat of the afternoon. Like always, she passed through the usually loud street of Khapamadi. But today the street was different. Silence cut across the atmosphere, as though the street was mourning. Exhausted and sweating from the intense heat, Tanaya strolled along the road, clusters of old cracking houses flanking her. A shadow loomed behind her and she turned to an Asian man wearing a shabby old coat, despite the heat. He was hobbling towards her. "My daughter, where is the river?" the man said in a crackling voice. He had a small plastic container in his hand. "I need to get to the river." The river was only a stone's throw away, and Tanaya thought that the old man must have struggled, perhaps due to poor sight, to find the river. She led the old man to the river through a mass of green thick vegetation. "Please get me some water," the old man begged, and Tanaya walked through tall grasses and small shrubs to dip the container into the water. As Tanaya turned around to head back to the old man, a strange tall man stood there, not an old man anymore. The coat was tangled in a heap on the ground. Clearly, the man had been in disguise. He smiled and Tanaya recognized him. It was Sparrow. She gasped and dropped the container. "Who are you? What do you want?" She wanted to shout, but her voice was only a whisper. "Come on, you're too young to be that forgetful. You know exactly who I am. I'm your uncle, Uncle Sparrow." He was leering, a playful smile on his face. "You tricked me. Why?" Tanaya asked, clenching her teeth and balling her fists. She had never liked Sparrow. Sparrow was supposedly her late father's friend, but she learned later on that he was only a parasite. He had not even come for her father's funeral. Instead of responding to her question, Sparrow bolted towards her. There was the river on the other side, and Tanaya's escape was highly limited. She picked the water container and threw it at him. Sparrow ducked and sprinted after her. Although much younger and possibly faster than Sparrow, she had nowhere to run. She was trapped between the river and the wall of shrubs. Sparrow snatched her like she was a scared chicken destined for slaughter. She struggled to free herself from his grip, but he knocked her on the face, sending her to the ground. When he started raping her, Tanaya was helpless. She couldn't even scream for help. She must have been bleeding in the head, where she was hit, because as the assailant groaned on top of her, she felt herself fading into a painful darkness. There was pain in her head and pain between her legs. She woke up feeling dizzy, shaking and shivering. A nurse entered her hospital room with a dose of medicine and some pills for her. After Tanaya narrated the story to her mother and the police, Sparrow was locked behind bars. A few weeks later, Tanaya was diagnosed HIV positive. This was how her life had dramatically changed. Now, as a boarding student, she encounters another problem. Thembiwe, a short, sassy, and loutish girl who had discovered Tanaya's status, has made Tanaya's life a misery. Thembiwe had seen some ARV drugs in Tanaya's red bag after Tanaya mistakenly dropped it on the floor. Civics Day has arrived and Tanaya's life is about to disintegrate. All the students are gathered in the dining hall as the talented Tanaya serenades the crowd with a melodious song. Her voice as sweet as that of a bird. Yeah, oh, the crowd of students cheers. After she finishes, Thembiwe stands up and everyone goes like, what now? I know, Thembiwe says. I know you don't like me, but it's better not to be liked for who you are than for who you are not. Right, Tanaya? She says, winking at Tanaya, and everyone knows she's about to drop yet another bomb. Tanaya here, your celebrity, is HIV positive, she says. Boo, the crowd shouts in response, giving Thembiwe a thumbs down. It's true, Tanaya cuts through the booing crowd and everyone falls silent. It's true that I'm HIV positive and I guess Thembiwe the witch is happy that I just confirmed it. Tears spill down her face. Tanaya runs to the hostels and buries herself in her blankets. The week that follows becomes very tough for Tanaya. Thembiwe has convinced her friends and a few other students to keep a distance from Tanaya. They start teasing, rejecting, and discriminating against her. One Monday morning, Tanaya enters the classroom and Thembiwe shouts, "Good morning, Mrs. HIV. Here is a special treatment for you. Boys," she commands one of the boys to place a chair and a desk at the far end of the classroom. Some students start giggling. "Those are yours. We quarantine you, Mrs. Big Disease. I hope you see that I care for you." Thembiwe speaks malevolently and the rest of the class bursts into a loud laugh. During tea break and lunch, her best friend betrays her by putting a plate, spoon, and cup aside for her, isolating her from everyone. At night, Tanaya cries bitter tears. Her mother withdraws Tanaya out of that school and enrolls her into a different institution where Tanaya feels welcome. She gains confidence and is now free to take her medication. What anyone says doesn't matter to her anymore. She now lives her life with peace in her heart. With God and prayer being her first priority, she is healed and inspired to write about her life story, emphasizing more on adhering to treatment. As for Thembiwe, that's another story.
Take-home message. Bullying in schools must be reported to relevant authorities, who should ensure that vulnerable children, including those infected with HIV, are not stigmatized and discriminated by other students. Defilement is a crime punishable by law and must be reported to the police for investigations.